Welcome back. Nonprofit grant writing is just one of the many ways that your organization can launch or expand your programs, but the grant writing process can mystify and confuse many people. As a nonprofit founder and executive director myself, I've written probably over 100 grants and successfully obtained several of those. So in this video, I want to share with you 5 of the most common questions that you might see on a nonprofit grant application or proposal, and offer up my tips on how to answer each question. If this is your first time on my channel, my name is Amber Melanie Smith, and as I mentioned before, I am a nonprofit founder and current executive director working full-time for the nonprofit that I founded many years ago, and I'm also a speaker on social impact, leadership, and service. Every week I make videos here on YouTube about how to successfully run a nonprofit, how to make an impact, how to figure out what your change-making style is, where to find volunteer opportunities, basically anything about how to make an impact in this world and the many ways to do so. I am all about helping aspiring change makers with tips and strategies to help you make an impact while living a life of purpose. So please, if this video helps you out, show me some love, subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and ring the bell to get alerts for getting a notification when my next video comes out. Okay, so before I get into the 5 nonprofit grant writing questions and tips for those answers, I want to just lay the groundwork here and let you know that there are a couple things that you're going to need to have ready and available in order to write any successful grant. It doesn't matter how awesome of a writer you are, you've got to have these things. You've got to have solid programming in place so that people will want to fund it. Okay, so a couple of the things you're going to need before you can get started writing a grant. The first thing you're going to need is your annual budget for your organization, the budget that has been approved and vetted and put together by you and your board of directors. The second thing you're going to need before you can write a grant is your organization's strategic plan. This is the plan that lays out the specific outcomes that you want to achieve for your program. So how many people are you going to help, how you're going to help them, and then shows your plan for working towards those outcomes. And the third thing you really want to have is, ideally, if your program's been going for a little while, at least a couple months to a year or more, you want to have collected data on the success of your program up until that point. This helps prove that you've got a great program deserving of funding to help expand it. If it's a newer program, you at least want to be able to show your organization's overall success in meeting its goals that might be similar to what you're trying to do with this program. And if you're completely new, then you want to look at your reasons why you think this program will succeed. So maybe something similar that has been tried somewhere else, the way they did it, why you think it will work for you as well. Like I said before, grant writing is honestly about 90% having a solid and successful program, and just about 10% good, clear writing. If you have a good program, the money should follow. Okay, so let's get into the 5 common questions that you might see on a grant application or proposal, and my tips on how to answer them. The first question that you are likely to see is not anything particularly mind-blowing, but that is to provide a mission and vision for your organization and an overview of maybe your organization's history and how you work. You want to make sure that you have a really clear mission statement and vision statement, and to know the difference between the two. So mission statement's more about how you're going to achieve your vision, and your vision statement is answering the question of, if you woke up tomorrow and you had changed the world the way you wanted to, what does the world look like now? So something like, our vision is to create a world without homelessness. That's pretty compelling. So using that same example, if your vision statement is, we would like to help create a world without homelessness, then your mission, which again articulates how you're going to do that, could read something like, we are going to create a world without homelessness by ensuring that everyone in our town has access to affordable housing. So you also might have a little bit of room in this section of your grant application to relate further to the funder. So what I typically like to do is read through the foundation or funder's website, learn what kind of words they like to use, what kinds of concepts they like to explore, and if possible, and if I can do it without bending my mission or making it seem like I'm straying from my focus, I will make an effort to include some of the same words that they use in my words, because that shows them that you're paying attention and might help trigger something in their brain about how you might be a good fit for them. The second very common question that you might see on a grant application is, how does your program work? You want to be very clear and specific and concise in your answer to this question. It's very tempting, especially for those of us who might have a background in creative writing, such as myself, to kind of be a little bit flowery in our language here and try to be overly inspirational and get them excited that way. But funders are reading dozens or hundreds of applications. They don't got time for that. So we want to make sure that we are answering their questions in clear, concise ways as often as possible. So what I would recommend for answering this question is just laying out the steps of how your program works step by step. For example, my organization that I run has a summer teen camp every year where we teach teens about leadership and service in the community. And whenever I'm applying for a grant to support this program, I will lay out the process of what the teens will experience during the summer camp, how we go about recruiting and finding the teens to participate, and how we are, knowing if the program is a success, which is also something we can answer later in the grant application depending on the funder. So it might look something like this. First, we outreach to fellow nonprofits in the community who serve teens to let them know that we have space available in our camp. Then the teens register and enroll, and we send them all the information they need. We get their parents oriented to how the camp works. They come to the camp, they learn from different nonprofit leaders on how to develop their own idea for social impact projects. They participate in different service projects every day, and then they design their own idea for social impact project and hone that idea throughout the week. So that is an overview and very just specific, clear steps on how the program works. Part of this section of explaining how your program works has to relate back to your mission and vision as an organization. So you want to make sure that there's a clear correlation and that you're not just describing a program that has no logical connection to the mission of your organization. So for the example of the teen summer camp that my organization runs, well, my organization's mission is to inspire a culture of volunteerism and helping others. So by having teens come through the summer camp, we can give them that training on how to lead positive change in their community. So I can connect the two that way. So you want to make sure that you can clearly articulate why your program has to do with meeting the overall mission and goals of your entire organization. The third common question on grant proposals often trips people up, and that is, how will you measure success? So oftentimes funders are just looking for your literal explanation of the tools that you're going to use. So how are you literally going to measure success? Of course, to know how to measure success, you need to know what success looks like for your organization, and that will get us into the fourth question I'll talk about here in a minute. But in the example of this summer teen camp that my organization runs, we measure success through before and after surveys, because the outcome that we're looking for is, how did the teens' attitudes and understanding and confidence and knowledge about their community, how did it change from the beginning of the camp to the end of the camp? So we take a survey at the beginning to get a baseline, and then we take a survey at the end to measure the difference between the two. So our literal tool and how we are measuring success is through a survey that measures those things. Now, other tools could include getting community testimonials. It could be other types of survey. It could be research study. It could be collecting anecdotes. There are a lot of different ways to measure success. You're going to want to make sure that the way that you identify is the appropriate way for tracking the outcomes you're looking to achieve for your program, and also a way that you can feasibly execute and afford, because research studies are not cheap. Now, the fourth question that I just alluded to is, what are your expected outcomes for your program? Specifically, usually for the period of time that you are seeking funding for. So a lot of foundations will fund you for 1 year for this program or a part of that year, or some will offer multi-year grants. So you're talking about your specific expected outcomes for the period of time that you are receiving that funder's funding. Now, what is an outcome? Often people will confuse an outcome with an output, but these are different things. An output is some quantity of a service or product or item that you have resulting from your efforts. So let's say you run a soup kitchen. An output for you would be the number of meals you have served. That is your output. That is the number of things you have produced through your work. An outcome, however, is how you changed something from the status quo. So in the example I mentioned at the beginning of a mission and vision of ending homelessness in the city, an output might be how many people you have placed in homes in a year, but an outcome would be how many of those people stayed out of the cycle of homelessness for the next 5 or 10 years, because that proves that you were able to completely change their lives for the better. It wasn't just, now they have a home and great, our work is done, but the sustainability of that, how did having a home change them? How did it allow them to change their whole life and be sustainable in their lives? So outcome is how you change something from the status quo. Using my teen camp example, that changed attitudes and knowledge and confidence and wisdom about their community from the beginning to the end of the program. So you want to be thinking about how are you actually changing lives, not just the number of something that you're producing. And in terms of how to articulate an outcome, it will usually read something like this. By the end of this funding period, the number of students graduating from high school as a result of our programs will increase from 50% to 75%. So you see what I did? I described how we had a status quo, that 50%, then the program intervened and it changed lives. And as a result, now 75% of students will graduate. So if you have that in mind, just to revisit the previous common question of how will you measure results, you can align how you'll measure results with the outcomes that you are looking to achieve. So in the example of having more students being able to graduate from high school, you can measure that by simply counting the increase in the number of students who are graduating from high school who had some kind of correlation and participation in your program. The fifth most common question that I see on grant proposals and grant applications is, how are you gonna spend our money? Most funders are going to ask for your annual budget as well as a separated out budget for your specific program that you are asking for funding for. So that's where those things you need in the beginning, your budget, etc., are going to come in handy. Now, sadly, you can't usually just say, give us the money for all of our program needs and it'll be awesome. You have to specify your intent on how you're going to spend each portion of the funding that you're requesting. So if you are asking for $10,000, explaining how you're going to spend $3,000 here, $3,000 there, $4,000 somewhere else, etc., up to 10. The funder will usually lay out what is an acceptable expense for the money that you're asking for from them on their website or in their application. So just make sure you are thoroughly reading through that and following their rules on that. So some funders will not fund any kind of staff support, and some funders only want to support operating and staff costs. Whatever the case may be, just making sure that you are knowing what those rules are and following them in your request. When you are outlining what you intend to spend their money on, should you receive their grant, and budgeting for that, if you don't know the exact cost for something, it's probably okay to provide a good faith estimate, do your research and provide an estimate. But if the amount that it ends up costing is drastically different, you will need to plan to update your funder later just to be transparent and accountable. My experience is that the best funders are not going to be mad at you if something is a little different than what you in good faith estimated. Funders are humans too, and they are providing you with the support because they care about your program and its outcomes and know that sometimes things evolve and change. It's all about being transparent and accountable and having a conversation with them. Okay, well that's all I got. If you have written grants, I would love to hear from you. What are some of the most common or even the most challenging or mystifying grant questions you've ever seen? Leave those in the comments below, and perhaps I or someone else who watches one of my videos can respond and help you out. I really hope that this was helpful to you and that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please again subscribe, give me a like, and ring that bell to get alerts when my next video comes out. If you are on Facebook, don't forget to check out my group, Change the World or Bust, where me and other change makers are having conversations about how we can make a difference in the world. Come on out and join us, and I hope to see you again next time. Have a great week.